The divorce decree called it shared parenting time. I called it the annual ritual of dread. This year, it was Mark's turn to have Lily for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. I had spent the afternoon trying to convince myself that Lily, my 8-year-old, sunlight-haired daughter, would be fine in that gilded cage they called a home. Mark's new wife, Carol, came from a specific kind of old Boston wealth, the kind that was heavy, silent, and judgmental. Their house, a Victorian behemoth nestled on a hill overlooking the frozen reservoir, felt less like a home and more like a carefully curated museum designed to showcase their superiority. I drove my tired, 5-year-old sedan up the winding, snow-dusted driveway, the tires crunching on gravel Mark probably paid someone 6 figures a year just to maintain. The house was blazing with light, every window a rectangle of warm, buttery yellow, draped in what I imagined was Carol's signature velvet. My own apartment, small and cozy, felt a million miles away, and I was instantly assaulted by the familiar, low-grade ache of inadequacy that Mark's world always triggered. It was a feeling I had fought hard to shed since I left him, but seeing his success packaged so perfectly always made the old demons whisper. I parked and checked my reflection. I had dressed simply, jeans and a thick, practical navy coat, but I knew I looked like the outsider I was. I wasn't one of them, and thank God for that. But Lily was there, and that was all that mattered. Lily met me at the door, her face a strange mix of forced excitement and tension. She hugged me too tightly, burying her face into my coat. I smelled wood smoke and a faint, foreign scent of expensive perfume on her sweater. "Mommy, I'll be fine," she whispered quickly, a little too loud, as if reciting a line. Carol appeared then, gliding down the sweeping mahogany staircase. She was all sharp angles and blinding smiles, wearing a cream cashmere shawl that probably cost my monthly rent. She made me feel bulky and clumsy just by existing near me. "Sarah." "So punctual," Carol chirped, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, a tone that always sounded like a gentle correction. "We're just about to start the family Christmas carols. Lily's going to be singing with Aunt Beatrice. A heart tradition, you know." I forced a tight smile. "That sounds lovely, Carol. Lily, be a good girl, okay? Call me later tonight, no matter what." Lily nodded, her eyes wide and anxious, darting between me and the top of the stairs where Mark was now visible, looking handsome and detached in a tailored suit. He didn't even bother to come down, merely raising a hand in a dismissive gesture. The exchange was quick, sterile, and painful. Every part of my mother's instinct was screaming, a raw, primal alarm bell ringing in the pit of my stomach, telling me to snatch her back and run. But I couldn't. The court orders, the social conventions, the sheer force of Mark's establishment, it all held me back. I was trapped by civility and the rule of law. I backed out of the large, carved oak door, and Carol closed it with a soft, definitive click that sounded like a lock snapping into place. I stood for a moment on the porch, feeling the cold air slice through me, watching my breath plume white in the porch light. As I got back into my car and drove away, the snow started to fall heavier, thick flakes swirling around the streetlights, turning the world into a beautiful, isolated Christmas card. And in that card, my daughter was now trapped inside the warm glow, but I couldn't shake the feeling she was surrounded by ice. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. It was Christmas Eve, the night of peace and good cheer, but all I felt was the rising tide of maternal panic. This was wrong. I knew it in my bones. Back in my small, quiet living room, the atmosphere was suffocating. I had put on a cheesy Christmas movie, but the sound was too loud, too cheerful, and utterly fake. Every shot of a happy family clustered around a fireplace felt like a mocking condemnation of my solitude. I checked my phone obsessively. 6:30 p.m. No call. 7 p.m. Nothing. I tried to reason with myself. They were singing carols, having a huge, formal dinner, surrounded by cousins. Lily was probably too busy or too overwhelmed to text. I made myself a mug of herbal tea, but the steam felt like an artificial warmth that couldn't penetrate the chill I felt inside. My apartment felt strangely cavernous, echoing with the silence where Lily's laughter should be. At 7:45 p.m., a single text came through. I snatched the phone off the coffee table as if it were a drowning man. The screen lit up with her contact photo, a picture of her covered in glitter glue from an art project. The text simply said, "Cold. Tired. Need my blanket." It was cryptic, but chillingly clear. Lily didn't complain about being cold unless she was genuinely miserable. The Hart house was always overheated. How could she be cold inside? I immediately replied, "Are you okay, sweetie? Tell me where you are. Is Mark there?" 3 agonizing minutes passed. The movie kept playing, a fake cheerfulness emanating from the screen. The snow outside was now swirling into a full-blown blizzard. Finally, the reply, "Can't talk. Grandpa H said I was being dramatic." That was it. The dam of my manufactured calm broke. Grandpa Hart was Mark's father, a formidable, imposing man who treated all children, especially female ones, like minor, inconvenient pieces of furniture. My tea was forgotten. I stood up, feeling a surge of adrenaline that was part fear, part fury. Being dramatic meant being inconvenient. In the Hart world, inconvenience was the greatest sin. I messaged Mark, "Where is Lily? She just texted me she's cold. She needs to call me immediately." The response was instant, and perfectly Mark, "Don't be ridiculous, Sarah. She's fine. We're having a wonderful family evening. Stop interfering. She's warm and safe." His safety meant she was physically within the structure, not emotionally or physically cared for. It was a hollow promise, and I didn't believe a word of it. I pulled on my boots and my thick coat. The custody agreement be damned. My lawyer, David, had warned me about violating visitation, but at that moment, the threat of contempt of court felt negligible compared to the cold knot of fear in my chest. I was getting my daughter. Tonight. Now. The drive was terrifying. The beautiful snow had turned treacherous, the roads slick with ice beneath a thick, swirling blanket of white. Visibility dropped to near zero in patches. I drove faster than I should have, fueled by a single, desperate mission. Every mile felt like an eternity, every turn a dangerous risk. I saw several cars pulled over, lights flashing, but I couldn't stop. I pictured Lily shivering, alone, waiting for her familiar blanket, and the image drove me forward. As I approached the Hart neighborhood, the houses grew larger, the lights brighter, mocking the storm's brutality. The snow seemed to cushion the world in an illusion of purity, but I knew the darkness that lay beneath the perfect white surface. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might crack a rib. I pulled up slowly, not into the main drive this time, but across the street, partially obscured by a stand of thick, snow-laden pine trees. I killed the engine and sat in the silence, watching. The Hart mansion glowed, a symbol of insulated luxury, untouched by the biting cold outside. The music was muffled, but I could hear a distant, cheerful piano. I knew the party was in full, oblivious swing. I crept out of the car, shutting the door as softly as possible. The cold was shocking, a cruel, immediate slap that stole my breath. It was far colder than I had realized during the drive. The wind was whipping the snow into a frantic dance. I approached the house not through the front, but around the side, moving quickly across the perfectly manicured lawn, now buried under half a foot of snow. I kept low, feeling ridiculous, like a spy in a bad movie, but necessity trumped dignity. I reached the large bay window that looked into the main living room, the grand salon. The sight was exactly as I had feared, and yet worse than I could have imagined. The room was magnificent. A towering Christmas tree glittered, dripping with antique ornaments and warm white lights. A massive stone fireplace roared, throwing golden light across the polished wood floor. Gathered around the fire were the Harts. Mark, Carol, Grandpa and Grandma Hart, Aunt Beatrice, and a few other impeccably dressed, laughing relatives, all holding crystal glasses that caught the light. They looked the epitome of holiday cheer, sheltered and smug in their cocoon of wealth. They were laughing, a loud, hearty, careless laughter that I could almost hear through the thick glass. They were enjoying themselves, completely and utterly absorbed in their own perfect Christmas narrative. My blood was already starting to simmer with rage and fear, but the sight that truly shattered me wasn't inside the window, it was just outside. A little distance from the house, near a small, decorative, iron gazebo that was now dusted with snow, sat a small figure. It was Lily. She was huddled on the stone bench of the gazebo, curled into a tight ball, facing away from the house. Her bright pink coat, which I had insisted she wear, was pulled tightly around her small body, but it was thin, meant for moderate cold, not this near blizzard. Her hair was damp with melting snow, and she was visibly shaking, her body convulsing with uncontrolled shivers. She was completely alone. No adult. No one checking on her. The contrast was a violent physical assault. Inside, the fire, the laughter, the golden light. Outside, my child, freezing, punished, and abandoned, only feet away, yet completely invisible to the people who were supposed to be caring for her. I felt a raw build in my chest, a nonverbal scream of maternal instinct, raw and powerful enough to shake the foundations of their perfect house. It was not mere neglect, it was a deliberate cruelty. I saw the way the light from the interior streamed out and stopped inches from her, leaving her in the bitter shadow. She was within sight of the windows, yet they could not see her because they were too busy admiring the reflection of their own self-satisfaction. My initial thought to knock on the door and be civil evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard, singular focus. The time for protocol was over. The time for diplomacy was dead. I didn't hesitate. I didn't pause to think about the legal repercussions, the restraining orders, or the judgment of Mark's high-priced lawyers. I dropped my head and ran, plunging through the deep snow straight toward the little pink coat. The snow was icy, soaking through my boots immediately, but I felt nothing but the heat of my fury. I reached the gazebo and fell to my knees in the snow beside her. I gently touched her shoulder. Her skin, even through the fabric, felt like ice. "Lily. Baby, it's Mommy. It's okay. I'm here." She looked up, her face pale, her lips tinged blue, her eyes wide with shock and relief. She didn't speak, only launched herself into my arms, clinging to me with a desperate, painful strength. The sound she made was a small, broken sob. My next action would not be a polite conversation. It would not be a quiet retreat. It would be a confrontation so complete and total that it would shatter their perfect Christmas and their complacent, privileged world forever. They wanted drama. They were about to get a shock that would define the rest of their lives. The walk from the gazebo to the grand oak front door took only seconds, but it felt like marching across a battlefield. Lily was a dead weight in my arms, her small body convulsing with shivers, her breath shallow and hitching. I didn't knock. I didn't hesitate. I simply kicked the heavy snow from my boots with one fierce scrape and threw open the door. The sound of the door hitting the wall, a massive, undignified thud, killed the piano music instantly. The laughter, which had been so loud and careless just moments before, died in their throats. I stepped into the opulent foyer, covered in snow that was already dripping onto Carol's pristine marble floor. I was a wild, wet, and furious disruption in their highly organized world. The grand salon was directly to my left, blazing with the golden light of the fireplace and the twinkling excess of the Christmas tree. For a second, no one moved. They were frozen in various poses of holiday cheer, Mark with a wine glass halfway to his lips, Carol holding a silver platter of canapés, and Grandpa Hart, the imposing patriarch, seated in a massive armchair, glowering. Mark recovered first. He slammed his glass down onto the nearby mahogany table. "What the hell are you doing, Sarah? This is trespassing. You can't just barge in here." His voice was a furious, low hiss, meant to control and intimidate. I didn't lower my voice. The cold fury had hardened it into something sharp and unyielding. I'm retrieving my child, Mark. That's what I'm doing. I walked 3 deliberate steps into the room, past the threshold, and held Lily out slightly so that the full extent of her condition was visible to the entire, staring family. Her pale skin, the faint blue ring around her lips, and the pitiful, uncontrollable shaking of her body told the story better than any words. She was outside, Mark. Freezing. Huddled on your stone bench in the gazebo, I stated, my voice cutting through the sudden, deafening silence. While all of you sat here, laughing, next to a literal roaring fire. Carol glided forward, attempting the practiced, condescending charm that usually worked on waitstaff and minor relatives. Now, Sarah, you're making a scene. We were handling a minor behavioral issue. She was being dramatic and was told to take 5 minutes to cool off. Grandpa Hart, shaking his head, added his booming voice to the attempt at cover-up. A child needs to learn manners. A little cold never hurt anyone, certainly not a heart. My heart, already a hammer in my chest, struck a note of pure, blinding rage. A little cold. A little cold. I repeated, my voice rising. Her core temperature is down, Carol. She is displaying early signs of hypothermia. She's been out there for over an hour, based on her texts to me. I looked Carol directly in the eye. Your 5 minutes of cooling off was child endangerment. Mark stepped between us, his face contorted in a mask of panic and anger. Get out. Now. Take her and go. This is a private matter and you're disrupting our... I'm disrupting your self-congratulation, I finished, cutting him off. I took one hand off Lily's back and reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. I am not leaving until I have irrefutable proof of what I found, I announced, turning the camera on. The red recording light pulsed, a tiny, damning eye. I want the whole world to see exactly what you prioritize on Christmas Eve. The camera's intrusion instantly broke the Heart's composure. The power dynamics shifted abruptly. They were used to being the audience, the judges. Suddenly, they were the defendants, caught under a spotlight. Put that phone away, Sarah. Mark lunged toward me, but I stepped back, shifting Lily's weight. My movements were instinctual, protective. I kept the phone steady, filming Mark's panicked, red face, then panning across the room. The perfectly set formal dining table, the towering, glistening Christmas tree, and finally, the roaring, beautiful fire that was the centerpiece of their oblivious happiness. Look at this fire, I narrated, my voice clear and steady for the camera. A fire so warm, they couldn't hear the crying child outside. Grandpa Hart suddenly rose, a huge, imposing shadow in his tweed jacket. Young woman, you have disrupted a private family gathering. You will hand over that device immediately. He started moving toward me, his hands outstretched. I backed up another step, pressing myself against the wall, positioning Lily between me and the hostile room. If any one of you, I said, projecting my voice to ensure the phone's microphone caught every word, touches me, touches Lily, or tries to take this phone, I will call the police right now and file abuse charges. You are all witnesses to my child's condition. The threat of police and, more importantly, the explicit mention of abuse charges froze them in their tracks. For the Harts, the threat of exposure, of public records, was worse than any financial penalty. Carol, visibly shaken, began whispering urgently to Mark. She's bluffing, Mark. Don't let her film us. Think of the charities. I took the opportunity to film Lily again, moving the camera close to her small, pale face, showing her chattering teeth and the dampness in her hair. This was the irrefutable evidence. The contrast between her condition and the extravagant warmth around us was visually damning. I am taking Lily to the hospital immediately, I stated, lowering the phone but keeping the recording going. I was done with the pleasantries. You have violently violated the duty of care defined in our custody agreement. This goes beyond neglect. This is malicious, intentional cruelty. Mark, recovering his executive sneer, tried one last attempt at damage control. You'll be in contempt of court, Sarah. Violating visitation. My lawyer will tear you apart. I looked at him, not with anger anymore, but with a chilling pity. There is no court in the country that will prioritize your visitation rights over a documented hypothermia case, Mark. You are done. You lost your chance to be a father the moment you let your family weaponize the cold. I turned toward the door, Lily clinging to my neck, her grip like a lifeline. I had the child, I had the evidence, and I had their panicked faces seared into my memory. I didn't rush toward the door. I walked slowly, deliberately, ensuring I maintained my composure. As I passed the group, a distant cousin, Aunt Beatrice, stepped out slightly from the cluster. She had always disliked me, viewing me as the gold digger who had somehow momentarily enchanted Mark. She sneered, her voice laced with poison. Still the drama queen, Sarah. Always trying to ruin Christmas for attention, aren't you? Some people just can't handle losing. That was the spark. That throwaway line about ruining Christmas was the final insult, the casual cruelty that broke the last chain of my civility. I stopped dead at the door. I took a deep breath, and slowly, I turned back to face them. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shout. I smiled slightly, a cold, empty expression that didn't touch my eyes. The camera was still recording. No, Beatrice, I said, my voice dangerously calm, the words carrying the full weight of my decision. I'm not ruining your Christmas. I paused for a deliberate moment, letting the silence hang, letting the fire crackle, letting them anticipate a scream or a plea. I'm ending your legacy. I swept my gaze across every horrified face. Mark, pale with fury, Carol, clutching her pearls, Grandpa Hart, thunderstruck. This video, the doctor's report, the whole story of how you, the prestigious Hart family, chose velvet and laughter over a shivering child, is going public, I promised. Every connection, every charity board, every society friend you have will know exactly what kind of people you are. You chose smug, insulated cruelty over basic human decency. My final line was delivered with absolute conviction. You wanted a show? You wanted drama? This is the consequence. You got it. Enjoy the reckoning. With that, I pushed the heavy oak door open and strode out into the blizzard. The door slammed shut behind me with a final, echoing crash, leaving them stunned, silent, and terrified in their golden cage. They had only just realized the scope of the disaster I was about to unleash. I didn't look back. Lily was my only focus. I rushed to my car, carefully buckling her in, running the heater full blast, and driving away from the mansion and the life I had escaped, knowing I was headed toward the biggest legal and public battle of my life. The emergency room was a jarring transition from the Hart's opulence. Here, the lights were fluorescent, the air smelled of antiseptic, and the staff moved with tired, genuine urgency. Lily was seen immediately. The attending physician, a kind, no-nonsense woman, confirmed my fears. Lily was diagnosed with mild hypothermia and severe exposure. The report was clinical, detached, and utterly damning. Patient presenting with core temperature below 95 degrees Fahrenheit, chattering teeth, blue-tinged extremities, and extreme lethargy. While Lily was being warmed and given a cup of hot chocolate that she cradled with her pale hands, I called David, my family lawyer. David was a man who preferred paperwork to high drama. Hearing my account of a freezing child and a laughing family, even he was shocked into profanity. Sarah, you did the right thing taking her, he said, his voice grave. But Mark's people will come at you with everything they have. Money and influence. They'll try to paint you as unstable and kidnapping her. They can try, I replied, the exhaustion setting in, but the resolve remaining firm. But I have the medical report and the video of their living room. We filed the emergency motion for temporary full custody, immediately. Mark has violated the duty of care. Flagrantly. David agreed. He spent the rest of Christmas Eve coordinating the paperwork, using the doctor's detailed report as the primary evidence. He also advised me to keep the video private for now, stating it would be a bombshell in court, but I already had a different plan for it. I settled into the uncomfortable hospital chair, watching Lily finally drift into a deep, safe sleep. The sight of her peaceful face, flushed with a healthy pink instead of the deathly pale, was the only peace I found that night. The quiet humming of the machines was infinitely more comforting than the Hart family's fake Christmas cheer. The next morning, Christmas Day, the temporary motion was filed. David warned me that Mark's lawyer would receive the papers and the battle would officially begin. That's when I told David my plan. We need to go beyond the court, David. Mark's family is too powerful. They'll bury us in motions and bankrupt me. We need to fight them in the one place their money can't immediately control: public opinion. David was hesitant. He worried about the ethical implications and the risk of turning the case into a media circus. I countered that for people like the Harts, public shame was the only penalty they truly feared. Their reputation is their shield, David. We need to shatter that shield first. I spent hours crafting a post, careful to remove specific names but leaving the details chillingly recognizable. I created a new, anonymous account and titled the thread, "I found my daughter freezing on Christmas while his family laughed by the fire." The post detailed the setting: the wealthy Boston suburb, the mansion on the hill, the roaring fireplace, and the chilling final image of the child alone on the stone bench. I ended it by quoting the cruel line, "She was just being dramatic and needed to cool off." The response was immediate and explosive. The visceral image of the child and the juxtaposition of the heartless wealthy family hit a nerve. Within 2 hours, the thread had tens of thousands of shares. People were disgusted, horrified, and hungry for details. The story went viral, sparking massive, angry discussions about parental neglect, wealth, and entitlement. The Hart panic was immediate. The viral thread spread like wildfire among their social circles. While no names were officially released, the details, the gazebo, the fireplace, the specific suburb, were unmistakable to anyone who knew the family. Mark called, but this time, the entitled anger was tinged with genuine fear. "Sarah, you lunatic. What did you do? Take that disgusting thing down. My mother is calling me, screaming. My name is on the shortlist for partner, and this will ruin me." I took a breath and pressed the record button on my phone. "You ruined yourself, Mark. Not me. Your daughter was freezing." "She was not freezing. It was a timeout. A disciplinary action. You are twisting this for revenge." Mark shouted. He sounded like a cornered animal. "Did you check on her, Mark?" Silence. "Did Carol check on her? Did your father, who told her she was being dramatic, check on her?" He stammered. We were busy. We thought she came back inside. Stop twisting this." I had what I needed. His frantic, undeniable admission that they were too busy and his continued minimization of her suffering. I hung up the phone and sent the recording to David, who was now fully on board with the public opinion strategy, recognizing it as a necessary defense against the Hart's monetary advantage. The emergency custody hearing was set for the first available date after Christmas, a somber occasion in the usually quiet family court. Mark, Carol, and Grandpa Hart were all present, looking impeccably dressed and radiating a controlled fury. Their lawyer, Mr. Stern, was exactly as David had described: ruthless, sharp, and focused only on procedure. He immediately moved to dismiss, claiming Sarah's entry into the house constituted harassment and that the child's condition was a fabrication motivated by an unstable mother trying to regain custody. David began his presentation. He started simply, reading the pediatrician's concise, clinical report detailing the symptoms of hypothermia. Mr. Stern tried to interrupt, claiming bias. but the judge, a tough, experienced woman, allowed the testimony. Then, David called the child advocate, who testified about Lily's emotional state. Lily's statement, delivered through the advocate, was devastating in its simplicity. "I was told to stay outside until I stopped crying. It got very dark. And then I started to shake very hard. I knocked on the window, but they didn't look." Mark whispered fiercely to Mr. Stone, clearly not believing his daughter would testify against him. But the advocate's calm, factual recounting sealed the emotional impact. The temperature in the courtroom had dropped lower than it had been outside the Hart mansion on Christmas Eve. The Harts were confident that the court would see through their emotion and recognize the power of their status. Mr. Stone's closing argument centered on Sarah's history of being an unreliable mother and her recent viral publicity stunt. Just as Mr. Stone was concluding, David stood up and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, we have just received a late piece of evidence that speaks directly to the malicious intent of the parties involved." He presented the leaked internal family chat messages. It turned out a younger cousin, horrified by the whole event, had quietly messaged David's office after reading the viral thread and realizing the truth. The messages were projected onto the screen. "Mark to Carol, 7:15 p.m. Is the kid still out there? The wind picked up, it's getting late." Carol to Mark, 7:16 p.m. "She needs to learn her lesson, darling. The cold will hurry it up. Don't worry, she'll apologize quickly enough." A collective gasp swept through the small courtroom. The word malicious now had clear textual proof. The Hart's carefully constructed composure cracked. Carol turned ash-white. Mark lunged forward, yelling, "That's fake. That's a forgery," and had to be restrained. The judge slammed her gavel down, her face set in stone. She looked at Mark and Carol, her eyes full of utter disdain. "Silence. The authenticity of this communication can be verified by the court's tech department. But the sentiment is clear." The case was over. The tipping point had been reached. The Harts had moved from neglect to deliberate, documented cruelty. That afternoon, I updated my viral social media post. I did not include the entire screenshot, but quoted the most devastating line, confirming that the family had intentionally left the child out in the cold. "The cold will hurry it up." This is the text message my daughter's stepfamily exchanged while she was diagnosed with hypothermia. This is not neglect. This is cruelty. The explosion of public shame was instantaneous and total. The story went beyond social media and was picked up by major, though careful, news outlets, referring to the prominent Boston family facing abuse allegations. The subtle veil of anonymity was shredded by the sheer weight of local gossip and the undeniable facts. The consequences were swift. Mark was put on administrative leave from his high-profile finance job. Carol was forced to resign from the 3 major charity boards she chaired before she could be publicly voted out. Their perfectly curated world was collapsing under the weight of their own indifference. Mr. Stone, Mark's lawyer, called David late that night. His tone was defeated. "David, my client is advised to settle immediately. We cannot win this. The evidence and the public sentiment are against us. We will agree to supervised visitation only. Draft the agreement." Mark, however, refused to admit fault, refusing to sign anything that used the word neglect or cruelty. His ego was the final obstacle, but it didn't matter. The judge was ready to rule. The final ruling came down 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed, the interest in the Hart scandal having reached a fever pitch. The judge, before delivering the verdict, gave an extraordinary speech. She looked directly at Mark and Carol, ignoring their lawyer. "This court is here to determine the best interest of the child. In this case, the actions of the defendants displayed not merely neglect, but a shocking disregard for the well-being of a minor child, transforming a disciplinary action into an act of malice." She condemned their use of the timeout as a weapon against a vulnerable child on a night of severe weather, noting the contrast between the warmth they enjoyed and the cold they deliberately inflicted. The ruling was definitive. Full physical and legal custody was awarded solely to Sarah. Mark's visitation was reduced to highly restricted, fully supervised meetings for a minimum of 1 year, requiring a mandatory, court-approved professional supervisor present at all times. Mandatory counseling was ordered for Mark and Carol, with no changes to the custody status until proof of completion and therapeutic progress was shown. Mark finally erupted. "This is a joke. She's taking my daughter. She planned this. You're just listening to the media frenzy." He had to be escorted out of the courtroom by 2 bailiffs, screaming obscenities about Sarah being a vengeful liar. I watched him go, feeling no triumph, only a deep, weary satisfaction. The sight of his entitled fury proved the judge's decision was correct. He still couldn't see the cold, he could only see the inconvenience. Weeks turned into months. Lily was back in her own school, sleeping soundly in her own room, tucked beneath her favorite weighted blanket. The trauma was healing slowly, but surely. She had nightmares about being alone in the cold, but she woke up immediately safe in my arms. The legal dust settled heavily upon the Hart family. Mark lost his job entirely and was facing internal ethics investigations related to the fallout. Carol and Grandpa Hart were socially exiled. Their names were synonymous with the Christmas child scandal, a permanent stain on their public facade. I, too, faced scrutiny. I received hate mail from people accusing me of exploiting my child for money. But I also received overwhelming support from mothers everywhere who understood the primal fear and fury of my reaction. I was working more, saving money, and finally achieving a true sense of stability, not just financial, but emotional. I realized that my shocking act wasn't just about custody, it was about regaining my power. I had stopped running from his wealth and instead used their fear of exposure against them. The memory of the event remained, sharp and cold, but it no longer terrified us. It was a scar, a reminder that the coldest places are often behind the warmest lights. It was December again. The snow was falling outside my small living room window, soft and quiet, dusting the city in a peaceful white coat. This time, there was no anxiety, no dread. There was only the sound of Lily's laughter. She was 8 now, almost 9. Carefully hanging a slightly lopsided, hand-painted ornament on our small, cozy, but real Christmas tree. She was wearing warm, oversized pajamas and sipping hot chocolate, utterly content. Mark's supervised visitations were sterile and rare, taking place in a drab office with a mandated therapist present. They held no warmth, and Lily viewed them as a boring obligation, not a beloved time with her father. I watched her, remembering the precise moment of my decision back in the snow, the moment I dropped all pretense of civility and decided to fight fire with a shockwave. I had often been asked by reporters and strangers, "What was the shocking thing you did?" Most people thought the shock was the viral post, the legal battle, or the total dismantling of the Hart Empire. But that was just the execution. I finally understood the real shock I delivered. It wasn't the social media or the court case. The true shock was the sudden, undeniable revelation to the Harts, and to the world, that a mother's love, when pushed too far, can overcome money, reputation, and power. It was the shock of an ordinary woman refusing to be silenced by the extraordinary weight of their privilege. The fire inside me that night, the protective, untamed fire of a mother, was the shock that changed everything. I walked over to Lily and wrapped her in a long, tight hug, breathing in the scent of chocolate and pine. She hugged me back, warm and secure. We looked out at the peaceful snow. The cold night was the catalyst, but the fire I carried, the fire I had learned to use, was the shock that gave us this peace. I found my daughter's safety not in quiet survival, but in righteous, explosive action. And that was the best Christmas gift of all.